saying let me start with this. Yesterday we discussed about the project life cycles. The project life cycle, when we are talking about, we have to first decide about the phases. Every project have a different type of phases. Phases are collection of the logically related project activities called phases. And from the starting of the project till the end of the project, there is a progression of these phases in a sequence or in a parallel. We call project life cycle. And when we talk the project life cycle, and earlier also yesterday we discussed about it based on the process oriented life cycle we discussed. Process oriented life cycle is the initiation, then planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, then closing. Those are called process oriented life cycle. Okay. Now we are going to understand about the development approach, and based on the development approach also we have the life cycles. Development approach means in a project, some of the phases they create something new, something they create about the product or the service, or some results they create. So those phases we call development phases. Those phases we call development phases. And the development phases follow certain approach. Development phases follows certain approach based on the type of industry and the risk factors or the complexity and the scope uncertainty or changing requirements or the customer's requirements. Based on that, the approaches may differ. So the development approaches means some of the phases we call development phases. Those phases follow certain approach. That approach depends on various factors. That includes like type of industry, type of the customer's requirements, or the changing requirements, or the complexity, risk factors, or the scope changes, uncertainties. Based on that, these approach follows differs. And based on this approach, development approach, we have a different type of life cycles. Those life cycles we call as a development life cycles. So based on the development life cycles, there are 5 approaches are there. These we are now going to study. I will tell you for each of them key characteristics. You start writing or you remember, but from the exam point of view, very important, many questions used to come. Okay, many questions used to come from this. The type of project approaches based on the development approach, as I told you. On that, we have these are the 5 different approaches of the development approaches. First is about the predictive life cycle. Predictive life cycle is the characteristics are scope is well defined. The scope is well defined. Based on the scope, we generally estimate the schedule, cost, and also the resource requirements. Then we make the planning for the entire project. At the early stage itself, we do the planning for the total project. Based on the plan, we generally execute. Based on the plan only, we execute. So therefore, it is called as a plan-driven approach. Therefore, it is called as a plan-driven approach. And we follow in the predictive life cycle a systematic step-by-step sequential approach we follow. We generally follow a step-by-step, generally sequential approach we follow, which are very rigid and structured. That approach we call as a waterfall approach. In the predictive life cycle, we follow the waterfall approach. And after the project is completed or the phase is completed, then at the end of the project or the phase, one-time delivery we are making. For example, the construction of a road. Road construction is completed, then we are delivering one time. Then of course the flyover construction over, or the bridge construction over, then we are delivering one time. Okay, at the end of the project or end of the phase. These are the key characteristics of the predictive life cycle. The examples of the predictive life cycle are traditional projects like construction of a house, construction of buildings, or the flyovers, or the bridges, or the roads, or the industrial plants. So these are called as a the follows the predictive lifecycle approach. Okay. Now let us understand about the iterative lifecycle approach. In the iterative lifecycle approach, the scope is uncertain. The scope is uncertain, subject to changes. Frequently, we are getting the feedback from the customer. Based on the feedback, very frequently we are doing the iteratively make the improvements or the refinements and corrections. And after all the corrections are completed, then one time delivery you are making at the end of the project or the end of the phase. Okay, here the scope is uncertain, and very frequently we are getting the feedback, and iteratively we are making the improvement based on the feedback. So these are the key characteristics, and also one-time delivery here also. Both the predictive lifecycle and iterative lifecycle is a one-time delivery at the end of the project or at the end of the phase. Okay. Generally, the examples of the iterative lifecycle is, for example, you are into the pharmaceutical company. In the pharmaceutical company, in the R&D department, regularly they make the experimentations. After the experimentations, each of the experimentation, they make the testing. And after the testing, they getting the feedback. Based on the feedback, they make the improvements. After the improvements, again they go for the testing. And after the testing, again they get the feedback. Like that, multiple times they make the experiments, then testing, getting the feedback, and improvements, and again testing. Like this, they iteratively many times they do. After all the testing and inspections and everything is completed, and all the trials have been done, then successful, then they one time delivering into the market, launching of a new product or the new vaccine or the medicine, medical compound they are making. Okay. So that is an example of the iterative life cycle. Now comes to the incremental life cycle. Incremental life cycle characteristics are early delivery, faster delivery, small deliveries but continuous deliveries, frequent deliveries. So these are the characteristics of an incremental life cycle. Here the changes are very less, changes in the scope are less, but the essential characteristic is early, faster and frequent deliveries to the customer, and customer is accepting the part deliveries. That is incremental delivery. And customer, the incremental delivery, what you are delivering, customer is putting into use. So the customer is happy and satisfied. Okay. So that is about the incremental life cycle. Now comes to the adaptive life cycle. Adaptive life cycle is combination of the iterative plus incremental. It is both the combination of the iterative plus incremental. That means the iterative characteristics are uncertain, the scope is uncertain, lot of changes happening, and frequently we are getting the feedback, and iteratively we are making the improvements. Then incremental life cycle characteristic is early delivery, faster delivery, small deliveries but continuous and frequent deliveries. So both the characteristics are combined together, we call adaptive or agile life cycle. Okay. Most of the IT industry or the software industry or the R&D, they are using the agile practices or adaptive practices. Okay. Now comes to the hybrid. Hybrid is the combination of the predictive plus agile. Predictive plus agile, adaptive or agile. These two combinations, predictive plus adaptive or the agile, that practice is called hybrid. Both the combinations are there. That means a part of the project they do as per the predictive life cycle, and balance part of the project they do as per the agile. So both the combinations are there. So therefore we call hybrid. Okay. An example of the hybrid is in 2022 there was a FIFA World Cup. Where the FIFA World Cup has happened? Anybody can recollect where the FIFA World Cup happened?
Qatar.
It is in Qatar. In Qatar, FIFA World Cup happened, but before the World Cup, almost like 6-7 years before, they started with infrastructure development. One of them is airport development, because in the World Cup, during the World Cup, lot of visitors will be there to the Qatar, in ingoing and outgoing, and all these visitors will be there. So that airport has to be developed to the very larger airport has to develop international standard. So what they did is, because this is the temporary requirement, only during the Qatar, that's a World Cup, lot of passengers will be there, incoming and outgoing. But after that, there may not be much. So therefore, they went with the hybrid model. The construction of the airport, they did with a hybrid. The permanent structures, the permanent structures, they did with the predictive life cycle approach, where the scope is well defined based on the scope, the schedule and the cost. Then according the plans they did, and as per the fixed designs and prior approved designs, they executed and they done the permanent structures as per the predictive approach. Then the balance, that is where the security counters are there, or the boarding counters are there, or the arrival and dispatch means arrival and departure counters are there. At those places, modular approach they adopted, flexible approach they adopted. Whenever they required, they can put the modular the approaches, that where they can keep the facilities. Whenever not required, they are able to remove it. Because if they made it permanently, then the maintenance will be very high cost. The lighting, AC, and securities, many things are very high cost. So therefore, what they did is, in modular fashion, flexible fashion, they did those centers where the security, the boarding pass, and the arrival and departure counters, these they made flexible model. Whenever required, they can put. Whenever not required, they can modularly they can remove it. So therefore, here they adopted both the predictive they followed with the permanent structures, where the modular structures they did, or modular facilities they did, those are flexible, those are follow the agile. Okay. And one more example I'll tell you for the hybrid is, for example, your project is to automation of the bank. Bank automation is your project. In the bank automation, there are two aspects are there. One is about the software development. Another one is the hardware also you have to upgrade, and some new requirements also there for the hardware. That hardware includes your the servers, then LAN connections, then cable networks, then your laptop, desktop, then printers, servers, and many things are there. Hardware requirements are the infrastructure requirements. Because whatever the software you develop, the software will not be working on all type of hardwares. Okay, the hardware that requirement also that means that hardware should be capable to handle the software, the A. So accordingly, hardware modification also you have to do. So the for hardware we are following the predictive approach. For example, the servers are the cable networks, are the about the laptops, desktops we are purchasing. And first you have to define the scope. The technical detailing must be very clear. Based on the technical complete details and brand requirements and all things, you are decided. Then only you are following with the tender procedure. In the tender, you are making the bid documents, and you are calling the vendors to participate, and they are providing the offers. And based on the offers, you make the comparative statement. Then the best offer you are selected, and you are awarded the contract. After the award of the contract, they are supplying the materials, and you are making inspection, then make the payment. So these will go in a very systematic, step by step, sequential approach. So that is what we are following the waterfall approach when we are taking the hardware requirement purchases. Okay. So that is the predictive approach. Then for software development, definitely software development, the IT or the software development, agile approach is very appropriate. So in the project, both the hardware requirement and software requirements are there. So for the hardware, you are following the predictive approach. For the software, you are following the agile approach. So both the approaches you followed. So therefore, it is a hybrid approach. Is it now clear, sir? Is it now clear?
This iterative and incremental is in waterfall or agile?
Predictive only waterfall, sir. Predict only, we follow the waterfall approach, where the iterative, the scope is uncertain. In the waterfall approach, the scope must be well defined. And we go as per the step-by-step sequential approach. But iteratively, every time we are going the feedback, like we are going back, we are going forward and going backward. Again, we are rectifying and improving and coming forward. And again, we are testing and getting feedback, going backward to improve. Like that, multiple times we do the front and back in the iterative life cycle. But in a predictive, always is linear approach. Linear approach means step by step, forward direction only we are moving. Step by step approach. Okay. That is predictive. Then incremental is the scope is almost not much of the changes, but the purpose is of the incremental is small deliveries we are making to the customer very frequently and early and faster, so the customer is happy. What are the small delivery you did and delivered, customer can put it to use, so that is value to him, so that he is happy. Okay, that is incremental. And iterative plus incremental will follow the adaptive approach or the agile approach. Clear, sir? Yeah, good. Now again, waterfall I am telling. Waterfall approach, as I told you, we are following a systematically, a step-by-step approach like this. A systematic, a step-by-step, a sequential approach we are following. That is waterfall approach. Then when we come to the iterative life cycle, you see many times we are getting the feedback, and based on the feedback we are getting the improvement, we are making improvements, and multiple times we do it, all the improvements and all things are completed, all the corrections are be done, then finally one time delivery we are making at the end of the project or the phase. Okay, that is at the end of the project or phase, one time delivery. Where the incremental life cycle, the incremental life, sorry, so the incremental life cycle, each of the cycle wise or each of the iteration wise, we are making the small delivery. First cycle or the first iteration we did the delivery 1, then the second delivery 2, third delivery 3, like this. Multiple times we are making the small part deliveries. It's not a full delivery, but part deliveries we are making. But iterative life cycle, complete delivery at the one time, at the last, all the iterations we did and improvements were done. Then finally, one time we are making the delivery at the end of the project or the end of the phase. But the incremental, every time, small cycle wise, small deliveries we are making incremental deliveries. Yes, Mr. Anil?
Yeah, so in incremental life cycle, now we have different incremental one, two, three, four. So when we plan only for the first incremental and then go with the next plan. So do we design more than one plan for this incremental lifestyle?
Yeah, when we follow the agile approach or the incremental approach also, planning is iterative planning. We always do the iterative planning, not the planning for the entire project. Of course, these things I will explain you in subsequent sessions. So I will explain more details, the planning and all thing, how it happens. But in agile approach or the incremental approach, when we are following, we always do the iteratively the planning. Means each of the iteration wise, we make the planning, accordingly we execute, and then we deliver it. Okay. Clear, sir?
Yeah, we will see in the next slides.
Yeah. Other in future, of course, not today, and of course, in next session, I will explain you about the agile approach when I come. Then I will explain you about the agile planning. Also, we discuss. Okay. So the agile is a iterative plus incremental. Both the combinations we call it an agile approach. Where the hybrid is both the combination of the this predictive plus agile. That is about the hybrid. Okay. Then one more aspect we have to discuss many times in the seventh edition. Sixth edition, not much of the reference of the guidance. But the seventh edition of the PM book, if you see, multiple times they use the word guidance. cadence is nothing but it refers to the timing and frequency of the delivery of the project deliverables. How frequently you are delivering, that is about the cadence. Okay. But there may be a single cadence, or the multiple cadence, or the periodic cadences. The single cadence means it's a one-time event. Means one time you are delivering. Generally, the predictive life cycle approach, like we do, we have completed the project, entire project, and deliver one time. Or certain times, some events also we do. Those are one-time events. The one-time events are the project kickoff meeting, for example. Maybe at the first, that is the in the planning, that is the first meeting. One time you do, that is introductory meeting. Okay. Similarly, go or no go decisions also certain times we take. Maybe those are one-time decisions we take. Okay. Those are called single cadence. Then multiple cadences are like many times we do the deliberations. There are certain issues or problems or something we have to discuss internally. We do multiple times the meetings, the brainstorm meetings or sessions, or the stakeholders review meetings, or the internally our progress review meetings also multiple times we do it. Okay, those are called multiple cadence. Then periodic cadences are like milestone wise. Or certain times the daily stand-up meeting also daily basis, periodically, every day like we have to do it. Or certain times the review meetings also we fixed always. Like for example, that Aditya Birla Group, that project I was handled, that is about the alumina refinery project. There every Friday we are meeting, Friday afternoon we are meeting, and we are sending the reports to the head office. So that is every frequently on the every Friday we are meeting. All the weeks developments we are compiling, and all the reports we are sending to the concerned higher authorities. So those are called periodic reviews. Every Friday once we are doing. Okay. So like this, there is a meeting. These are periodic cadences. Some examples of these things you let us understand. Some examples. For example, software development. The software development, the deliverables are code-based and documentation testing test cases we do. And the delivery cadence is generally is bi-weekly sprints, maybe 3 week sprints or 4 week sprints, like that we are doing. The delivery cadence is the period we are mentioned about. The sprint later I will explain you. The sprint is has certain duration. This is the time, the fixed time frame. A sprint is nothing but a fixed time frame. Iteration or the sprint we call in agile. So those are nothing but fixed time frame. Maybe it is 1 week, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. As per the Scrum model, it is 1 to 4 weeks. So we are fixing certain time frame, that is periodic. So that is where the delivery cadence is bi-weekly, or some example like I am telling. Maybe anything of the 2 weeks or 3 weeks we can take. Then development approach, generally agile we are following. Then the building construction, for example, construction of a building. Then here the architectural design or progress reports and all things are the deliverables, for example. Then we may having the monthly like milestones, or maybe once in quarterly milestones. Based on the type of project, based on the type of requirements, we make the delivery cadences we can fix. Okay. Then generally we follow the waterfall approach. Here we follow. Then the website development, for example, again is in agile related happens. Then wireframe design mockups are the function sites. Then generally weekly iterations we do. For example, weekly, or it can be a bi-weekly, or the fortnightly, or the once in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, like the sprint you can develop. So generally we follow the agile approach. Similarly, the manufacturing process, for example, for improvements we are doing, we are initiating some project for the improvement of the process, for example, in the manufacturing process. Then the process analysis or the pilot testing or the implementation plan. These are the deliverables, for example. Then the cadence may be phase based, or example monthly or the end of the project. Then generally we follow waterfall approach. Like this, there is a cadence is there. Cadence means that the frequency of the deliverables. Okay. Now let us understand about the agile and the waterfall. The comparison will make. Generally, the plan-driven approach, that is about the predictive lifecycle approach, where we follow the waterfall approach. There, the scope is fixed because scope must be well defined. So, scope is fixed. When the scope is fixed, the quality also generally fixed. But the estimations we do for the cost and time are the schedule. Based on the scope only, we do the estimations of the cost and time. Okay, this is about the waterfall approach we follow. Whereas in agile, we fix the time frame. Is entirely like inverse of this waterfall approach. Here in agile, the time frame is fixed. The fixed time frame we generally call iteration or the sprint. The fixed time frame. So the time is fixed, and in agile, generally software industry, the cost is related to the resource cost. So the fixed time, so resources also per hour, per week, like that, there is fixed costs are involved. So that cost also fixed. The fixed time and fixed cost, quality also fixed. These three parameters are fixed in the agile. The estimations are the scope. That means we first fix the time frame, and within the time frame, how much work we can perform, that is being estimated. Accordingly, we are performing within the given time frame, within the sprint. So here the scope is always subject to changes, and scope is being estimated to fit into the time frame. The scope is estimated to fit into the time frame. Is it clear, sir? Is it clear? Especially those who are not from the agile framework or agile understanding, for them I am asking, is it clear to all of you? Those who are not into the agile? Yes, sir. Okay, very good. Agile method, of course, next week we will go, because we are going to step by step first the project approaches we have to discuss. Then after that, the agile related the values and principles we will discuss. Then practice will go. Okay. Please send. What is this? Somebody is written. Okay. Okay, now the hybrid. Hybrid is the combination of the predictive plus adaptive. This is about the hybrid approach. Now again I am explaining the essential, the approaches are essential key aspects of the iterative, incremental, then agile. Iterative lifecycle is the scope is uncertain, subject to changes, and incremental lifecycle the scope is almost like known and not much of the changes. In iterative, very frequently we are getting the feedback. Based on the feedback, we are getting the learning and then improving. That is frequently happen the feedback. Where in incremental, the focus is faster and the incremental deliveries to the customer is the focus. Iterative, the focus is on the improvements and refinements, where the incremental lifecycle, the focus is on the customer value and satisfaction. Incremental lifecycle, frequently iteratively we are making the many times improvements, corrections we are doing iteratively, frequently we are doing, whereas the incremental lifecycle, we are making the customers very often the deliveries we are making, incremental deliveries or value we are creating and delivering to the customer very frequently. Here the iterative life cycle one-time delivery, where the incremental life cycle frequent deliveries, even though it is small but faster deliveries. And high level of changes are there for the iterative life cycle, where the incremental life cycle, the changes are low. The scope related changes I'm talking. Then generally iterative life cycle is used in the laboratories where the experiments are being done. There it is being used. Research and development, it is very ideally suitable. Incremental life cycle where the customer wanted sorry where the customer wanted frequently small deliveries, but frequent deliveries, early deliveries wanted, then we follow the incremental life cycle. Both the combination we call it an agile. Agile is a change driven approach, and it is a combination of the incremental, iterative and incremental, and scope is uncertain, frequent changes are happening. Even then, we are focusing on the customer satisfaction, customer value, that is the focus. Accordingly, we are delivering the frequently and early deliveries we are making, even though it is small but faster deliveries. And degree of change is very high. And generally, we are using the IT industry or R&D projects. We are using the agile life cycle. Is it clear, sir? Understood? Is it clear?
Yes.
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 Good. So now let us understand how the predictive and then agile. Then combination of these things, we have a hybrid. Predictive life cycle, it is a plan-driven approach. It's a plan-driven approach. Whereas an agile is a change-driven approach. Predictive life cycle scope is well defined, but agile scope is uncertain, subject to changes. Then in predictive life cycle, upfront planning we do, means in the early stages itself, we do the planning for the entire project. That is what the upfront planning for the total project. Whereas in agile, we do the iterative planning, not entire project planning, but each of the iteration wise we do the planning. Then predictive life cycle follows the waterfall approach, which is a very rigid and sequential approach, very structured approach. Whereas in agile, it follows the iterative approach plus incremental approach. It is very flexible and adaptive. Predictive life cycle is a process and contract oriented. Very rigidly we follow the contract or the negotiated agreements, and is process oriented. Whereas in agile is a customer oriented approach. And predictive life cycle scope based delivery, because first we have to define the scope, and accordingly schedules and all things are being made, and accordingly we have to make a delivery based on the scope. Whereas in agile, it's a time box delivery. Time box means it is a each of the iteration wise or the sprint wise we are making the deliveries. It's one time delivery at the end of the project or the phase in the predictive, whereas in agile is very frequent deliveries and small but faster deliveries. In the predictive life cycle, the degree of changes are less, are generally restricted, whereas in agile, degree of changes are very high. Normally, we are offering the changes. We are accepting the changes as a welcome measure for improvement in agile. And the predictive life cycle, the customer interactions are low. Generally, at the beginning it happens, again at the end of the project it happens. Intermediately, there is no much of the interactions. But in agile, it is very frequent interactions. Each of the iterations wise, we are calling the vendors, we are calling the customers, and we have interactions. The sprint review, later I will tell you, there we are interacting with the customer. And frequent interaction happen. The predictive life cycle is where the traditional project generally we follow the predictive approach. The traditional projects we follow the predictive approach, like construction of bridges, construction of the industrial plants, or the construction of houses and buildings. There we follow the predictive approach. Generally, where the physical developments are there, the predictive approach is most appropriate. Where the software related R&D projects we follow the agile. Where the intellectual investments are there, where the agile is most favorable and fit into. Then hybrid is combination of the predictive plus agile. These are situation based. Based on situations, we are adopting the hybrid. Okay. And as per the PMI, the annual surveys, the pulse of the profession, they call it pulse of profession. Every year, they're making the publication of the pulse of the profession. As per the pulse of the profession, even though traditional projects also, some of the traditional projects they're following the hybrid approach because they want to follow certain good practices for the agile. They are traditionally following the predictive approach, but some good approaches of the agile also they're adopting, and therefore both the combination of the predictive plus agile is hybrid. That means almost like 33% of the traditional projects moving towards the hybrid. Means some part they are adopting the agile. Fully they can't move into the agile. The physical developments like in infrastructure industries or the, for example, the industrial plants, these they can't do with the agile framework. Some part they can do, but totally they can't shift into the agile. Because in agile, many times we make the experiments, trial and errors like, and we do, and then we can take the feedback, make the changes. For example, in construction, we do the planning, accordingly we execute, we construct something, and because we want to change the plan, then we are again destruct the construction, then again reconstruct. And construction, destruction, reconstruction is very costly, so we can't follow the agile in the physical developments in totality. But some part of it definitely we can adopt. Where the certain uncertainties are there generally we adopt the agile practice. Is it now clear, sir? Understood? Is it clear?
Yes.
Any doubt? Any doubt or interactions? Or some of you already have both the experiences, predictive plus agile. And if you want to add something also, always welcome, because this is a knowledge sharing session. Okay. Anybody want to add something? Always welcome.
Sir, I am here that
Yeah.
waterfall method is used on the basis of previous project. If you have completed any one project and same similar scope of work, a similar project you do, so then you take the experience from that. That is the
Okay.
waterfall method, sir.
Yeah, that's true. Partly true. Not fully I endorse, but partly true. Definitely, suppose previously constructed some house, and again similar like house you are constructing, there you are taking the design and other things are known that you are doing okay. But even the new projects also, new constructions, new flyovers, new industrial plants, new aerodromes, that also can be done. There is need not be only previously we did, then only we can follow the predictive. No, predictive is where the scope is well defined. For example, you want to construct for the means for example this industrial plant. In the industrial plant, first you have to understand what is your requirement, and based on the requirement, all the technical details and all things you have to collect and freeze it. The quality related standards requirements and the customers requirements and engineering design related requirements, all those things you have to complete it, finalize. The scope has to be freezed. Then based on the scope only, you have to execute. The plan has to be completed. Then only you have to execute. So it is a plan-driven approach. Based on the plan only, you have to execute. Okay. So it need not be always the previous we did something, then only we do the similar like. No, need not be. A new project also can come. For example, new hydro power generation project can come. Earlier we may not be done the new such type of higher project, but it can be done the new project also. So the hybrid can is a predictive can be adopted when the scope is well defined. The designs are well defined before we are starting the execution. When we want to construct a house, first the plan, architectural design are very well finalized. Based on the architectural design and the plan, we are executing. So that way we follow the predictive approach. Yes, Mr. Jis.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask, would also like in predictive, would this also be like ones that use like critical path method or maybe Prince 2 or those examples as well?
Those things, the critical path and path method, what you're talking, that's in the schedule management. I'm going to talk in the next some other session. There is a subject is there, plan schedule management. After the scope, we are going for the schedule, then now the cost, like that we are going. So in the schedule, we are discussing about how to make the schedule network diagrams, then accordingly, the schedule has to be finalized based on the part and CPM method. Okay. There's another session is there. I'm going to study about, I will explain you about more details.
I have one question.
Yes, sir.
In India, many of these metro cities are having metro trains.
Yeah,
Whether these metro train projects will fall under predictive or hybrid or agile.
Mostly it is a predictive, sir. Mostly it is a predictive.
Okay.
Because when of the simple
Why
thing,
not hybrid? Because
hybrid not true. Some part of it where of the means appropriate the agile practice they adopt, because agile is not generally fit into the physical developments. But in the metro like that you are talking about, in the metro rail and other thing when you are developing, those are physical developments. The design has to be well finalized first. The plan, the scope has to be completed. Based on that only we have to execute. So we can't do the part wise, we can't do the planning. Total project has to be planned, and total project the design and other engineering aspects has to be finalized. Then only we have to execute as per the plan. So the plan driven approach generally we follow in metro projects, okay, where the physical developments are there. But as I told you, some part of it we can adopt the about agile. Some part means at the early stages, for example, the scope is not very clear, where is uncertainties are there, where lot of complexities are there, lot of options are available to us, the subject to changes, the different stakeholders give the different opinions. At that time, we can adopt the agile. And after the agile, lot of iteratively we are making the improvements and all thing. Then the scope is completely understood. Then we can start with the predictive. Okay. So some part of it only we can adopt the agile, not fully. Okay.
Yeah. In most of the cases, I would say that the traditional projects do follow the predictive. Basically, the customer, it is basically the customer experience which then leads to whether it moves to hybrid or no. Because we cannot be very, like, we cannot stick to the predictive in that case because the customer nowadays are very demanding. So, that may also be the reason that some part of the predictive may go into that hybrid model. Because generally, we also used to say no to the customer that we have a defined scope, but then the customer, in order to have that customer experience and satisfaction, it it sometimes happens that we have to move or switch to that hybrid model.
Yeah, hybrid, but we can't move completely to agile, the physical developments.
Yeah.
Physical developments like construction of a house or the metros or the industrial plants, 100% we can't move into the agile. Some part, of course, definitely, as you told, where the uncertainties are there, subject to changes are there, and where we have to make iteratively some improvements, and its scope is not defined. For example, lot of customers or the lot of stakeholders are different type of opinions. Then we are collecting all the requirements. Iteratively, we are making the improvements, and again changes are coming. Again, we are making the improvements and collecting all the details. And like this, certain times we can make to when the uncertainties are there, then we can make this agile approach. Then finally we freeze it. After freezing, then we have to move into the predictive only. When in case of the physical developments, okay, good. Because in agile, n number of changes are adopted. in the software industry, for example, even though changes are happens, physical developments are you are not doing. Only it is some software, some coding you are doing, and some changes are required. At most, you are losing is some these man hours you are losing, or some time of the your resources you are losing. Nothing else. Not physically you are developing anything. So there is no need of the resources again to be the physical developments has to be destroyed to make the changes not required. So therefore, in the intellectual related activities whenever there, the agile is very suitable. Intellectual related activities like R&D also, there is a very suitable for the agile. And in fact, I did for the two large pharmaceutical companies in the R&D department. We did about the agile. Okay. So like this, we can do some agile where the intellectual activities are there, but physical activities are there. Then completely we can't move. Some part, of course, we can adapt so that we can go at most with the hybrid, but not fully about the agile. Okay. Clear? Is it now clear to everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, good, good, good. So now let us go with the question answers. Okay. Okay. Starting with the table. Table generally we have created to make you understand about the keywords. The subject we have discussed, these are the subject we have discussed. And for that, what are the keywords we have to understand. So let us do. First one.
Iterative.
Yeah, it is an iterative life cycle because repeated cycles are there, iterations, and also feedback we are getting, learning and improvements. So these, therefore, these are about the iterative life. These are the keywords for the iterate. The next one.
Incremental. Incremental.
Oh,
Agile, agile,
Agile is
it is an agile because you see, small but faster is definitely about the incremental. But
unclear.
before that,
Scope is unclear.
yeah, before that you have to read unclear scope, uncertainty, complexity, frequent changes. These are the characteristics of the iterative life cycle. So both the characteristics are there, iterative plus incremental. So therefore, it is an agile. Okay. Is it now clear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Next one.
Hybrid.
It's hybrid.
It's a hybrid because fixed
Yeah.
design and fixed design, these things are there. Therefore, fixed design always we follow the predictive life cycle, and changing, adopting the changes and the frequent changes happens. Therefore, it is an agile. Both the combinations are there. Therefore, it is a hybrid. Okay.
Then
Incremental.
Yeah, this is about incremental, faster delivery,
Smaller
steady,
delivery.
small delivery, faster delivery, incremental deliveries. So therefore, it's the incremental. Last is the predictive life cycle, which is a plan-driven approach. Is a plan-driven approach. Okay, good. Now let us go with some question and answers. Yes. Here see. Yeah. So this is about the, you see, the scope is vague, uncertainties are there, like vague and uncertainty, and excessive changes are also happening, wasted work and reworks. So these are all characteristics of the iterative life cycle. These are characteristics of the iterative life cycle.
Iterative.
And also, at the end, you are talking about the customer requirements or continuous deliveries. It's not iterative is one-time delivery characteristic, but here we want the continuous delivery. Continuous delivery is possible in incremental life cycle. So both iterative plus incremental is there. So therefore, it's a B is the correct answer. Okay.
C, it seems. Hybrid.
Why it is in hybrid? Why not others?
Because it is construction, so has to be a bit of predictive also.
Also, just if I can add, maybe for the first model, it's gonna be agile, and then once you know exactly what to do, then it's gonna be predictive.
So finally, what is your option, sir?
Hybrid.
The option hybrid. Okay. And what about others? What about others?
According to me, it should be agile because every time we are asking for customer feedback.
Okay. So therefore it is agile.
Yeah, customer interaction will be high, right? So it's kind of customer oriented approach we are following. So it will be should be agile in that way.
Okay. So generally in a PMP exams, reading the content and understanding the context, very important. Reading the content and understanding the context. So if you read the very carefully the content and they're calling out the overall project, they talk first about the overall project. First paragraph, if you read the context, you can understand very clearly it is about the predictive approach because the design similar to the earlier one. So therefore, generally the physical development and designs are earlier to one, the scope is well defined. So therefore, the first paragraph you read the context, then we clearly understood that is about the predictive approach. Then come to the second paragraph. Second paragraph, if you understand, and it is very clearly talking about the very frequently we are taking the each of the flat wise the customers' opinions and views, and accordingly we are developing and delivering. So therefore, the agile approach we are following. So here we have to understand overall as a project, as a whole of a project. So therefore, both the predictive plus agile combined is there. So therefore, it is a hybrid. How it happened in the industry, generally, infrastructure industry. First, we do the skeleton structure, like this skeleton structure, based on the similar design or the predefined design. And then each of the flat, based on the customer's requirement, we are making the changes. Each of the flat wise, we are making the changes. So here in the structure, we are developing based on the predictive, where the changes are required accordingly, we are modifying the flat. Here we are following the agile approach. As a whole of a project, overall project, so we are following the both predictive plus agile. So therefore, it is a hybrid. So it is now clear. Okay.